The bell above the glass door jingled like any other day. But this time, the footsteps that followed didn't match the polished elegance of Goldwyn and Sons. One of Manhattan's most exclusive jewelry stores. They were ragged, uneven, heavy with the weight of the streets. A man stepped inside, his coat tattered, beard untrimmed, shoes practically shredded. His smell hit first. Then came the silence. Customers froze. Sales associates held their breath. Security twitched by the entrance. One of them, Jason, hissed into his earpiece, "We've got a vagrant. Should I remove him?" But something stopped him. The homeless man didn't stagger round or shout nonsense. He walked straight, slowly, like he had a purpose, like he belonged. His eyes still gray, alert, and surprisingly calm scanned the room until they landed on a necklace in the center case, platinum with a single teardrop diamond. And then he smiled. From behind the counter, Tiffany Goldwyn stared in disbelief. "This is a joke," whispered Nancy, one of the assistants. "We're not a soup kitchen." But Tiffany didn't laugh, because for a moment, just a moment, she saw something strange. A flicker of recognition dot that face, older, dirtier, roughened by life, but familiar. And that smile, it pulled her back to a memory she'd buried deep, one involving her father, a photograph, and a name she hadn't said aloud in years. Before anyone could say a word, the man raised a hand. "I'd like to see that necklace," he said softly, voice low but steady. Silence. "You've got to be kidding," muttered Jason, stepping forward. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," Tiffany cut in sharply. "Wait." Everyone turned. "Bring it out," she said, locking eyes with the homeless man. Jason blinked. "Miss Goldwyn," bring it out." With hands shaking from confusion, Nancy unlocked the glass and lifted the piece with tweezers. She placed it in front of the man, eyes narrowed. He didn't touch it. He just looked at it, and tears welled in his eyes, still as perfect as the day she wore it. He whispered. Tiffany's chest tightened. "Who are you?" she asked. The man looked at her, not with arrogance, not with fear, but with something she couldn't read. "I'm just someone," he said, trying to keep a promise. Before anyone could respond, he reached into his coat. Security moved instantly. "Hands where we can see them," Jason barked, but the man didn't flinch. He slowly pulled out a folded, worn photograph and slid it onto the counter. Tiffany picked it up, her fingers trembling, and then her world shifted. It was a photo of her mother, wearing that necklace, standing beside a younger version of the man now before her. Arm in arm, smiling. Jason stepped back. Nancy gasped. Tiffany's voice cracked. "Why do you have this?" And the man finally said the name. "Because I'm Daniel. Daniel Roth." She dropped the photo. Daniel Roth, the name her father once whispered during a stormy night when her mother disappeared. The man he blamed for everything. The man she was told had ruined their family. The man who now stood broken, homeless, and yet impossibly gentle in her store. And just like that, the marble floor beneath Tiffany's designer heels felt like quicksand. Because if he was really Daniel Roth, then everything she thought she knew was about to unravel. Tiffany's pulse thundered in her ears. She hadn't heard that name in decades. Not since her mother vanished one rainy night, leaving behind a 6-year-old girl and a husband who locked the truth inside a vault of silence. Daniel Roth, the man her father swore had stolen his wife, a traitor, a ghost from their past. And now, here he was, flesh and bone, smelling like rain and rust. Tiffany held the photo with both hands. The edges were soft. The image faded, but there was no denying it. Her mother's radiant smile, Daniel's arm around her waist, the necklace glittering like a frozen tear. Jason hovered nearby, still eyeing Daniel like a threat. Nancy mouthed, "Do you want me to call someone?" But Tiffany didn't answer. She couldn't. "How did you know her?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Daniel took a step closer, but not too close. He moved with the hesitant grace of a man who learned to read fear in people's eyes. "She was my fiancée," he said. Gasps rippled through the store. Tiffany's lips parted. "What? Before she married your father?" Daniel continued. "We were engaged. She wore that necklace the day I proposed. I gave it to her myself." "No, that can't be." Tiffany's voice cracked, panic rising. It was summer, Daniel said, his eyes drifting to some invisible past. We used to sit by the Hudson, talking about our dreams. She called it the Forever River. He chuckled, eyes glossy. Said it felt like time stood still there. Jason interrupted sharply. Okay, that's enough story time. No. Tiffany cut in, her voice firm now. Let him speak. The billionaire's daughter was no longer just a poised businesswoman. She was a daughter desperate for answers. Daniel's voice turned softer. I never stopped loving her, Tiffany, even when she chose someone else. Even when she disappeared from both our lives. Tiffany's hands trembled. My father said you ruined her. Daniel's smile faltered. I believe he did what he thought was right. But the truth isn't what he told you. He looked around the store, at the gleaming gold, the spotless glass, the tailored silence. People think being rich means having power, he said, but sometimes it just means you can bury things deeper. And then, from inside his coat, he pulled out a folded letter yellowed, crinkled, and sealed with an old red wax stamp. Tiffany hesitated, then took it. Her fingers ran over the seal, and as she opened it, her breath hitched. It was her mother's handwriting. Dearest Daniel, she read silently, and with each line, the floor beneath her shook harder. Her mother had tried to leave her father. She had planned to run, to return to Daniel, but something happened, something that stopped her. I never got that letter, Daniel said, eyes distant. I found it years later, in a locker we used to share. She must have dropped it by accident. He exhaled. I thought she was gone for good. Then, last year, I found out she died. Tiffany's throat clenched. We buried her in Maine. She whispered. Daniel nodded. I was there. He said, from afar. I couldn't come close. I wasn't ready, and I didn't think I was welcome. Tiffany's hands fell to her sides. Everything, the stories, the silence, the accusations suddenly felt like smoke, and for the first time in her life, she wondered, what if everything she believed was a lie? Daniel turned to leave. I didn't come to cause trouble. I just wanted to see the necklace one last time. But Tiffany grabbed his sleeve. Wait, he stopped. I have questions, she said. So many. Please, don't leave. And for the first time in years, Daniel looked like someone who might still believe in hope. Tiffany led Daniel into the back office usually reserved for billionaire clients and private appraisals. But this wasn't a business meeting. This was unraveling her entire childhood. She shut the door gently, but her heartbeat slammed like thunder. Daniel sat carefully, his posture humble, as if the velvet chair might reject him. You need to understand, Tiffany began. My father never mentioned you by name, just once, and when he did, he looked like he wanted to break something. Daniel nodded. We didn't part on friendly terms. Why? There was a long pause. I loved her, and she loved me, but she married him instead. Tiffany sat across from him, folding her arms tightly. Then why didn't you fight for her? I did. Daniel leaned forward. I proposed to her in 1998. She said yes. We were planning to move to Oregon, open a cafe, a tiny dream, but it was ours. Then one night, she didn't show up. I waited at the station for hours. His voice broke slightly. I thought maybe she changed her mind, until months later, I got a letter from your father's lawyer. He pulled a crumpled envelope from his coat and handed it to Tiffany. She opened it, read a few lines, and her jaw clenched. The letter claimed Daniel had a criminal record, that he had stolen from a past employer, that if he came near her again, charges would be filed. Her eyes darted up. Is any of this true? No, he said, calm but firm, not a word. Tiffany swallowed hard. You think my father faked this? I know he did, but I couldn't prove it, and I couldn't find her. He exhaled. So I left. I ran. First Oregon, then Arizona. Eventually, I stopped running and started surviving. Tiffany leaned back, overwhelmed. So you've been on the streets ever since? On and off, Daniel replied. I had jobs, lost them, tried again, fell down, got back up. But every year, on the anniversary of our engagement, I'd find a way to see that necklace. Tiffany blinked. Wait, what? It was in a magazine once, Daniel said. Then on display at an auction, then again at your store when it opened. That necklace is the last thing I have that connects me to her. Suddenly, the pieces started connecting in Tiffany's mind. There had been a man disheveled, quiet who once stood outside during their grand opening. A few months ago, another who lingered during a gala. They thought he was casing the store. While he was mourning, Daniel stood up. I should go. But Tiffany stood too. No, you can't just disappear again. He paused, looking at her. I'm not your enemy, he said. I know, she replied, almost whispering. But I don't know who you are. That's when she made a decision that would change everything. I want you to stay in the city. I'll book you a hotel, just for a few days, so we can talk. Daniel hesitated. You don't have to. I do, she said, because if even half of what you've said is true, then I've been living in a lie my entire life. He looked down, then finally nodded as she called her driver to arrange the hotel. Daniel stood quietly by the window. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that inside this luxury jewelry store, a man who slept on benches was being offered a second chance, not just at shelter, but at truth. But little did Tiffany know, someone was watching. From across the street, through tinted glass, a figure sat inside a black car watching the store, and Daniel and his face looked very familiar. The luxury SUV rolled away from the curb, carrying Daniel Roth to a hotel that probably hadn't seen a man in torn shoes in years. Inside, Tiffany sat across from him in silence. She booked him a suite not just out of guilt, but because she needed time. Time to think, time to breathe, time to question everything. She couldn't sleep that night. She sat in her high-rise apartment, glass of wine in hand, staring at the old photo of her mother with Daniel. Her mother looked happy, unfiltered joy, nothing like the tired, distant woman Tiffany remembered in her final years. Was it possible? Had her father really trapped her? The questions wouldn't stop. Meanwhile, across the city, inside a sleek, black vehicle parked outside Goldwyn and Sons, the man behind the tinted window clenched his jaw. Victor Goldwyn, Tiffany's father. He hadn't stepped foot inside the store in 3 years, ever since passing control to his daughter. But he watched. He always watched, and what he saw today rattled him. The moment Daniel Roth walked through those doors, Victor's past had risen from the grave. He pulled out an old flip phone. Yes, he still used one and dialed. I need a file, he said. Everything you have on Daniel Roth. Yes, everything. Back in the hotel, Daniel took a real shower for the first time in weeks. The hot water bit into his skin like fire, but he didn't complain. He let it burn. When he emerged, the staff had left him clean clothes, tailored, no less. He looked in the mirror and barely recognized himself. He saw a man who once had dreams, a man who had once been someone's future. Maybe he still could be. The next morning, Tiffany picked him up personally. She drove, not her driver. She wanted privacy. Where are we going? Daniel asked. Somewhere my father never let me visit. 10 minutes later, they pulled into a cemetery. Row after row of clean headstones. She led him through the grass until they reached a modest marble marker. Rachel Goldwyn, 1977 to 2020. She's here, Tiffany whispered. Daniel fell to his knees. He didn't cry, but his hands trembled as he placed his fingers against the name etched in stone. I never got to say goodbye, he said. She asked about you. Tiffany murmured, right before she died. I thought she was hallucinating, but now I think she knew you were still out there. Daniel closed his eyes. I never stopped looking. Suddenly, Tiffany's phone buzzed. A text. A known number. You don't know who you're dealing with. Stay away from him. She froze. Another text followed. This is your only warning. Her face paled. Daniel saw it. What is it? She shook her head. Nothing. Just spam. But it wasn't. And deep down, she knew exactly who had sent it. Her father had never approved of secrets. And now that one of his biggest ones had returned, he was ready to bury it all over again. But this time, Tiffany wasn't going to let it happen. She turned to Daniel. I want to know everything. No more half-truths. No more riddles. If I'm going to fight my father, I need the real story. Daniel looked at her and slowly, he nodded. I'll tell you, but you won't like what you hear. They sat in a quiet coffee shop near the park neutral ground. No velvet chairs, no cameras. No Goldwyn security breathing down their necks. Just the cups of black coffee and a pass waiting to be spilled. Daniel took a breath. It started with a deal, he said. One I never agreed to. Tiffany leaned in. What kind of deal? I was a junior appraiser. He began. Your father ran the largest gem certification office in the state back then. I worked under him long hours, low pay, but I was good, real good. He smiled faintly. That's how I met your mother. She brought in a private collection part of her grandmother's estate. I was supposed to evaluate it quietly, but instead, we started talking. He looked up. I fell in love with her before I even knew her last name. Tiffany's lips trembled, and she loved you deeply, Daniel said, voice low. We planned a life together. Simple. But then, Victor found out. He leaned back. He didn't take it well. Tiffany frowned. Because he wanted her? No, Daniel said. Because he'd already bought her. Tiffany's eyes snapped open. What? Your father had a deal with Rachel's family, Daniel explained. It wasn't arranged like in old movies, but it was close. His company needed legitimacy. Her family had it. She was the golden ticket. And when I showed up, I was a threat. Daniel's voice turned bitter. He called me into his office one night, offered me $500,000 to walk away, said he'd erase my debt, give me a job in London, a condo, anything. All I had to do was disappear. Tiffany's voice cracked. And you refused? Of course I did. Daniel looked down. So he made sure I had to leave. The next week, false accusations surfaced. Theft, misconduct. Suddenly I was fired, blacklisted, evicted. He tapped the table, and Rachel, she vanished. I thought she believed him. I thought she left me by choice. Tiffany blinked away tears, but she didn't. No, he said, shaking his head. She didn't. That letter she wrote, that was her trying to come back to me. Tiffany stared at her cup, her hands trembling. My father ruined you. He ruined both of us, Daniel said, and from what I see, he's still doing it. Just then, Tiffany's phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. Walk away, or we'll both end up buried. Daniel saw her expression change. You're getting threats. She nodded. He sat up straight. You need to be careful. He plays dirty. I'm not afraid of him, she said. But the truth was, she'd seen her father destroy careers with a phone call, make competitors disappear with quiet lawsuits. He didn't just wield power, he manufactured reality. And if he was willing to go this far over a decades-old love story, what would he do now that Daniel was back? Tiffany looked at him, her voice soft. I need proof. Something solid. Something that can expose him. Daniel nodded slowly. There's a box. Her eyebrows lifted. A what? A lockbox. He explained. Your mother and I used it to store personal letters, photos, mementos. It was ours. Before she disappeared, she had it moved somewhere. I never knew where. Could it still exist? I think so. He looked up, eyes determined. If we find it, it could change everything. Tiffany grabbed her bag. Then we're going to find it. But as they left the coffee shop and stepped into the morning crowd, they didn't notice the man with the Bluetooth earpiece across the street, watching, listening, and dialing a number. They're moving. He said, You want me to intervene? The reply came in a growl. Not yet. Let them dig. When they get too close, then we bury them. The wind swept through the alleyway behind Rachel Goldwyn's childhood home. As Tiffany stood in front of the rusted back gate, heart pounding. It had been over a decade since she'd last stepped foot here. Her mother's family had sold the property after the funeral. Now it sat vacant, waiting for demolition. But maybe, just maybe, it still held secrets. Daniel stood beside her, clutching a handwritten note, something Rachel had scribbled on the back of an old restaurant menu. Years ago, it had resurfaced among his few belongings, after Tiffany gave him a suitcase of what little her mother had left behind. Scrawled in fading ink, if something happens, it's in the place where stories hide. You'll know where. Daniel pointed to the house. She always called the attic her story vault. Tiffany's breath caught. The place where stories hide. They broke in through the back, no alarms, no electricity. Dust and decay clung to everything, but Tiffany moved like a woman on a mission. They climbed the creaking staircase, flashlight beams flicking through the dark, until they reached the attic hatch. Daniel yanked the rope. A ladder dropped. Cobwebs. Silence. A stale smell of forgotten years. Inside, the attic was mostly empty, but tucked behind a crumbling stack of children's books and holiday boxes. They found it, a small metal lockbox, no bigger than a briefcase. Tiffany wiped dust off the top. "Do you have a key?" she asked. Daniel shook his head, but Tiffany didn't hesitate. She pulled a letter opener from her bag and wedged it under the latch. After a few grunts and a well-aimed strike click, the box popped open. Inside, dozens of envelopes, photos, receipts, love letters. One item stood out immediately: an old voice recorder wrapped in a silk scarf. Daniel's eyes widened. Rachel hated technology. He said she only ever used that recorder when she was scared. Tiffany pressed play, and her mother's voice filled the attic. "If you're hearing this, I failed. I tried to leave, but Victor found out. He threatened to ruin Daniel, to cut me off from Tiffany. He said he'd fabricate charges, fake photos, make the courts believe anything. And I believed him. I let fear decide. I'm sorry." Tiffany's hand flew to her mouth. "I don't know how to fix this, but if this box survives, maybe someone will. Maybe Tiffany will." The message ended. Daniel's hands trembled. He picked up a letter, his name written in Rachel's handwriting. Tiffany read through other documents. Bank statements showing massive cash withdrawals. Photos of her mother with bruises. One document, notarized and unsigned, looked like a restraining order against Victor, never filed. "Everything was here. Everything. Double quotes. Do you realize what this means?" Tiffany whispered. "This could destroy him." Daniel looked at her, conflicted. "That's not why I came back." She turned. "What do you mean?" "I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to remember her, to feel like she still existed somewhere." Tiffany stared at him. "But don't you want justice?" Daniel's silence was loud. But their moment was broken by a sharp creak downstairs. Tiffany froze. Another step. Daniel grabbed the flashlight and turned it off. The attic dropped into pitch black. Another step. They weren't alone. Someone had followed them. Someone who didn't want that box to leave the house. A shadow moved below. And then crashed. The front door slammed shut. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to stop them now. They were trying to trap them inside. The attic fell dead silent. Tiffany gripped the box tight against her chest, knuckles white. Daniel crouched low, his body shielding her as their ears strained for any clue. Then another sound. A footstep. Deliberate, heavy. Whoever was downstairs wasn't there to steal. They were here to silence. Daniel motioned to the corner, where a small crawl space led to the old roof access hatch. He whispered, "We're not walking out the front." Tiffany nodded. They moved like ghosts through the dark. The only light a sliver of moon through the attic vent. The lockbox weighed heavy in her arms, not just physically but with everything it could expose. They reached the crawl space. Dust rained as Daniel forced the hatch open. Below them, the backyard, overgrown grass, rusted gate, no signs of movement. "I'll go first," Daniel whispered. He lowered himself, landing softly in the weeds. He looked up. Signal. Tiffany followed, nearly slipping on the shingles. Her heels cracked. Her breath burned. But she landed safe. They didn't wait. Daniel led her down a narrow side alley, away from the street, away from where the car had been parked. They didn't talk, just ran. 10 minutes later, they ducked inside an all-night diner, quiet, neon lit, and empty except for a sleepy fry cook and a waitress reading a gossip magazine. Tiffany slid into a booth. Daniel sat opposite. Both were panting. She clutched the box like it was a newborn. "Do you think he sent someone?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer right away, but his eyes said it all. Victor Goldwyn knew, and he wasn't just watching anymore. He was hunting. Meanwhile, in a boardroom high above Manhattan, Victor stood alone, looking out over the city like a king surveying his kingdom. His assistant entered, phone in hand. "They got the box." Victor's jaw tightened. "I want it back. But sir, if the press sees what's inside, they won't." His voice turned cold. "Activate Protocol 7. The assistant froze. "That protocol was never." Victor turned sharply. "Do it." She nodded and left. Victor sat at the head of the long table. beneath a chandelier that cost more than most people's homes. He opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope labeled contingency, Roth. Inside, photos, old surveillance shots, forged documents, contracts signed under duress. He wasn't just prepared to ruin Daniel Roth. He was ready to erase him. Back at the diner, Tiffany opened the box again. There, tucked under the love letters, she found something. Knew a thumb drive. Daniel raised an eyebrow. What's on it? Tiffany frowned. Let's find out. They plugged it into her laptop, and what came up made their stomachs twist. Video files, secret recordings, audio clips, spreadsheets, all compiled by Rachel over the years. She documented everything: Victor's threats, his manipulation, even shady business deals. At one video, dated 3 months before her death, Tiffany pressed play. Her mother appeared on screen, sitting on a bench in Central Park, hair tied back, voice calm but urgent. If anything happens to me, I need this to be seen. My husband isn't who he pretends to be. And if you're watching this, Tiffany, I'm sorry. I tried to protect you. But the truth matters more now than ever. Tears ran down Tiffany's face. She knew. She whispered. She knew something would happen. Daniel stared at the screen, jaw clenched. We need to go public. But Tiffany hesitated. Not yet. If we rush this, he'll crush us. Daniel nodded slowly. Then what do we do? Tiffany looked up. We outplay him. And somewhere across town, Victor Goldwyn poured himself a scotch, staring at an old family portrait, a portrait with a secret, because there was one truth left, one revelation that even Daniel didn't know, and when it came out, it would change everything. The next morning came fast and heavy. Tiffany sat on the hotel bed, laptop open, the lockbox and its contents spread out across the comforter like pieces of a broken life. Daniel sipped weak coffee in silence, watching her analyze every photo, every document. She was more than a jewelry heiress now. She was an investigator. But the truth was about to hit her like a freight train. Daniel, she said slowly, look at this. She held up a sealed envelope. It had no address, just her name in her mother's handwriting. She opened it. Inside was a birth certificate, hers. Only, it wasn't signed by Victor Goldwyn. It was signed by Daniel Roth. Daniel blinked. What is this? Tiffany's hands trembled. It says, you're my father. The air left the room. Daniel took the paper, eyes scanning every line. No, he whispered. That's not possible. Tiffany stood. Is it? He dropped into the chair, breath ragged. I knew she was pregnant when we were together. She told me. But when she left, I assumed Victor said he told everyone the child wasn't mine. Her voice cracked. You never asked. I wanted to, he said, but I didn't want to confuse a child who didn't even know I existed. And by then, Rachel had gone completely dark. Tiffany stumbled back, hitting the edge of the dresser. My entire life, I thought he was my father. Daniel whispered. He raised you. No, he controlled me. He lied. He lied about you, about Mom, about everything. Daniel stood. Slowly. Tiffany, if this is true, then you're my real father, she said, voice shaking. And he's been keeping us apart my whole life. She looked him in the eyes. For the first time, she saw herself in them, the same sharp focus, the same silent fire. I need a DNA test, she said. I need to know for sure. Daniel nodded, overwhelmed. But in his heart, he already knew. And so did Victor. That same morning, Victor Goldwyn stood in front of a mirror, fixing his tie, preparing for an emergency press event. His assistant rushed in. Sir, they didn't release anything yet, but someone hacked your server last night. Victor stiffened. How much? They got some financial files, possibly recordings. They haven't leaked yet, but Victor muttered, time to bring him, Monroe. The assistant paled. You sure? Yes. He growled. If Roth thinks he's going to take what's mine, he has no idea what we'll look like. Back at the hotel, Tiffany's phone buzzed, a known number again. But this time, it wasn't a threat. It was a video. She played it and nearly dropped the phone. It was her father. Recorded in secret on a private yacht, talking to someone about making Rachel disappear if she ever opened her mouth. The audio was scratchy, but clear enough. Tiffany stared at the screen, rage boiling. He killed her. She whispered. Daniel sat down slowly. We don't know that yet. Yes, we do, she snapped. She was healthy. She wasn't sick. Her heart attack came out of nowhere. And now this? Daniel grabbed her hand. Then we make this count. No revenge. No shouting. We expose him, right? Tiffany took a deep breath and nodded. But just then a knock at the door. They froze. Daniel peeked through the peephole. No one. He opened it cautiously, and there, on the floor, sat a package. No return address. Inside. A single S. No label. Just one word written in red ink on the side. Run. Tiffany stared at the small black USB resting in her palm. The word run in red ink wasn't just a warning, it felt like a countdown. Daniel stood beside her, tense. We shouldn't plug it in here. She nodded. We'll use a public terminal, somewhere anonymous. 30 minutes later, they were in the back corner of a grimy internet cafe in Chinatown, an old spot Daniel remembered from his drifting years. Cash only, no security cameras, no questions. Tiffany inserted the USB into a dusty monitor. At word. To life. One file. Last Testament. MP for the click. The video began with static. Then cut to a dimly lit room. A man mid-50s, pale, nervous, sat in front of the camera. He looked directly into the lens. My name is Gregory Monroe. If you're watching this, I'm probably already dead. Daniel froze. Tiffany whispered, Who is that? He used to work for Victor, Daniel said slowly. Back when the rumors started about missing financial records, whistleblowers, he vanished 10 years ago. The video continued. I was Victor Goldwyn's cleaner, not in the janitor sense. My job was to cover tracks, falsify documents, shut people up, and yes, silence those who knew too much. Tiffany's stomach churned. He ordered Rachel's death. The screen flickered. Monroe leaned closer. She wanted to go to the press, told him she had copies of everything, so he made a call. I wasn't there when it happened, but I was. Told her medication was swapped enough to trigger a cardiac arrest. Undetectable. Quick. Daniel grabbed the table. I knew she didn't just die. He muttered. Tiffany's hands shook. He got away with it, Monroe said, voice breaking. But not forever. I kept my own insurance file. On this drive, you'll find documents, voice memos, even to confessions he never knew I recorded. It's all here. He reached forward and whispered into the camera. Finish what Rachel started. The screen went black. A second folder appeared on the desktop. Evidence _01. Tiffany opened it, and her eyes widened. Bank transfers, shell company records, bribe trails to law enforcement, doctors, even judges. A video clip showed Victor in his office shredding what looked like Rachel's original medical files. This was more than a scandal. It was a bomb. This could end his entire empire, Tiffany whispered. But just as she copied the files onto her own encrypted drive, boom. The cafe's power cut. Screams. Smoke. Daniel grabbed her hand. We're not safe. They bolted through the back exit into a maze of alleyways. Behind them, the building they just left burst into flames. Sirens howled in the distance. Tiffany gasped. He's trying to erase everything. Daniel yanked her into an abandoned stairwell. He knows we have the files. Tiffany clutched the drive. Then we release them. Tonight. But Daniel shook his head. Not yet. Not like this. If we go to the police, they'll shut it down. He owns half the city. Then where? She asked. Eyes burning. Daniel thought. Then slowly, a name came to his lips. Margot Devereaux, who she was a journalist, Rachel's friend, fired years ago for trying to expose Goldwyn. If anyone still wants the truth, it's her. Meanwhile, across the city, Victor stood in his office as flames reflected in the glass behind him. A man in a black coat entered silently. They escaped. He said. Victor didn't flinch. They won't get far. He said coldly, because tomorrow the story breaks my way. He held up his phone. I'm going to destroy Daniel Roth, and this time, even my daughter won't stop me. The old brownstone at the edge of Queens looked abandoned. Chip paint, ivy-covered windows. Silence thick enough to choke. Tiffany hesitated. This is where she lives. Daniel nodded. If she's still alive. They rang the bell. Nothing. Then As they turned to leave, the door creaked open. An older woman, gray streaks in her tight curls. Sharp eyes behind librarian glasses stared at them like she was ready to swing a frying pan. Unless you're ghosts or Girl Scouts, you've got 5 seconds. Margot Devereaux? Daniel asked gently. She blinked. Roth? He nodded. Margot pushed the door open wider. Well, damn, you're not dead. They stepped inside. Stacks of newspapers lined the walls. Clippings pinned across a giant corkboard showed a spider web of scandal politicians, CEOs, secret payoffs. At the center, Victor Goldwyn. I've been tracking that monster for years, Margot said. But no one listens to a washed-up whistleblower. Tiffany stepped forward. We have the proof. She handed Margot the USB. Margot slid it into her dusty laptop. As the files loaded, her eyes widened. Her lips parted. She let out a dry laugh. I knew he was dirty. But this is genocide for the elite. Tiffany paced. We want to release it. Safely. Not through corporate media. Margot cracked her knuckles. I've got 3 independent journalists I trust. Hacker friends. A deadman switch. Server, we do this right, and he'll never recover. Daniel asked, can you do it fast? She raised an eyebrow. Sweetheart, I've been waiting for this day. But Victor was already playing offense. That morning, every major outlet ran headlines. Billionaire's daughter being manipulated by deranged vagrant. Photos of Daniel disheveled, seemingly. Shouting plastered every screen. A fake psychiatric report claimed he had delusions and violent tendencies. A talk show host sneered, is Tiffany Goldwyn really abandoning her father for a stranger claiming to be her long-lost dad? Victor stood in front of a podium, cameras flashing. My daughter is clearly under duress. She's being used. This man, Daniel Roth, has a known history of fraud. I pray for her safety. Behind the scenes, lawsuits were filed, warrants drafted. A media storm spiraled, but Margot, she was unfazed. She handed Tiffany a phone. Watch this. A private video began playing Victor at a dinner party, laughing while referencing his ghost operation to eliminate Rachel. It was crystal clear. Margot smirked. I've just sent that to 247 independent creators, podcasts, Reddit mods, Twitter hounds, even the real press. I've dropped the pin. It's gone global. Tiffany watched in real time as hashtags exploded. Hashtag Goldwyn Files, hashtag Rachel Goldwyn Truth, hashtag Danielle Rothwasserman's anchors scrambled to backtrack. Talk shows aired apologies. Bloggers dissected documents live. Victor's empire was buckling, but Tiffany knew it wasn't over. That night, Daniel stood on the rooftop of Margot's building, watching the skyline. Tiffany joined him. For the first time, she said, I feel like I know who I am. Daniel smiled faintly. You're stronger than both of them. She looked at him. You're not just my father. You're the only man who ever told me the truth. He exhaled. You don't owe me anything, but I want to know you. She said, really know you? Daniel nodded slowly. Then we start tomorrow. Just then Margot rushed upstairs. You need to see this. They followed her down. On the TV, breaking news. Victor Goldwyn resigns from board of Goldwyn Holdings. But the image that followed turned their blood cold. Victor, stepping into a black car outside the courthouse. And beside him, a man in a suit, holding a briefcase. With the Roth family crest on the side. The image froze on screen. Tiffany leaned forward. Did that briefcase really have our family crest? Daniel stared, stunned. That symbol hasn't been used in decades. Not since my father passed. Margot rewound the footage, paused, zoomed in, clear as day, an embossed silver crest, to wings crossing over a shield with the initials DR. What does it mean? Tiffany asked. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. It means Victor isn't just covering his tracks. He's using something that belonged to my family. Margot's phone buzzed. Dozens of journalists were texting her. One message stood out. Victor filed a claim this morning. He's contesting Daniel's identity. Says he has proof that Daniel forged everything. What? Tiffany gasped. Daniel's face hardened. He's going to try to erase me again. This time legally. Margot snorted. Too late for that. We've got audio, video, dates. Hell, we've got Rachel's own voice. But Tiffany wasn't reassured. Don't you see? She said. He's trying to flip the narrative. He knows he lost the court of public opinion. Now he's going after the courts. Margot sighed. You're right. He's playing long game. If he can cast doubt, even an ounce, he can drag this out for years. Daniel stood abruptly. I need to go back. Margot raised an eyebrow. To where? To my old family estate. He said, Victor bought it after I disappeared. If he's using that briefcase, then maybe he's hiding something else. The next morning, they drove north 3 hours through fog and forgotten towns until they reached a wrought iron gate covered in ivy. The Roth estate. Tiffany stared in awe. This was yours? Daniel nodded slowly. Before it was stolen, they slipped through a side path Daniel remembered from childhood. The house was still magnificent stone walls, arched windows, silence thicker than snow. Inside, it had been modernized, clean, cold. They found the study, Daniel's father's old office, but the walls were different. No books. Just locked cabinets. Tiffany spotted something small, scratch marks under the floor rug. She pulled it back. A latch. Daniel opened it. A hidden compartment. Inside, a second lockbox. He opened it slowly, and what they found changed everything. Original land titles, family heirlooms, a stack of documents detailing the Roth family's shareholdings across multiple companies, including Goldwyn Holdings. Tiffany gasped. Daniel, this says your father owned 20% of the company before the merger. Daniel nodded. He was Victor's silent partner until he died. I always thought those shares disappeared. They didn't, Tiffany whispered. Victor took them. Suddenly it all made sense. Victor didn't just destroy Daniel for love. He destroyed him for control. Everything, the lies, the forged charges, even Rachel's death, it was all part of a hostile takeover. And now they had proof. But back in the city, Victor was on the move. His legal team filed emergency injunctions. He hired an aggressive PR firm. Anonymous threats were sent to journalists. And then a warrant for Daniel Roth's arrest for criminal impersonation, digital forgery, and defamation. The headlines exploded. Exposed or imposter? Roth faces arrest amidst chaos. Tiffany stared at the screen. They're going to take you away. Daniel nodded, calm. Let them. This time, we have everything. But she wasn't calm, because if the wrong judge took this case, it could all fall apart. Suddenly, Margaret's burner phone lit up. Blocked number. She answered, a male voice. You want to win? Meet me. Alone. Who is this? I work for the man in the briefcase. The call cut. Margot paced outside the coffee shop, eyes darting between every pedestrian. The message had been clear. Come alone. But Tiffany wasn't far, watching from the car, phone in hand, ready to record or call for help. A man stepped out of the alley. Not tall, not imposing, but sharp. Clean suit, expensive watch. The kind of guy who knew how to hide in plain sight. You Margot? I don't answer questions from shadows. He smirked. Fair. My name's Elias. I work for the briefcase. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Talk. Elias handed her a folder. Inside is a private journal. Daniel's father's. It outlines the original share agreement with Victor Goldwyn, handwritten, signed, dated, never filed publicly. Margot flipped through the pages. Her breath caught. This is a bombshell. Elias leaned in. Victor forged a fake death transfer after Roth Sr. passed. Claimed full ownership. That's how he gained control. Why are you giving me this? Because I served the wrong man for too long, Elias said, and because the world deserves to know who Daniel really is. He turned, disappearing into the fog like a ghost who had finally made peace. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, spectators, protesters outside chanting justice for Rachel. Daniel stood at the defense table, head high, flanked by Tiffany and Margot. Victor sat across the aisle, silent, expressionless, but his eyes were tired. The judge entered. This court has reviewed the evidence, including private recordings, financial documents, and sworn testimony. A hush fell. The charges against Daniel Roth are hereby dismissed in full. Applause erupted. Tiffany gripped Daniel's arm. He didn't cry. Not yet. But then the judge continued. In light of new evidence, the court finds probable cause to investigate Victor Goldwyn for conspiracy, fraud, and wrongful death. Gasped. Victor stood slowly, calm on the outside, but broken underneath. As bailiffs approached. He whispered, "You think this makes you a hero?" Daniel turned to him. "No," he said softly, "just a father who never gave up." Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed, but Daniel kept walking. Tiffany led him away from the chaos into a quiet garden nearby. There, she turned to him. "You never had to be perfect," she said. "You just had to show up." He smiled, eyes wet. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. You are now." She pulled a folded paper from her purse, the DNA test. She handed it to him. He didn't open it. "He didn't need to, I know," he whispered. She hugged him. For the first time in 25 years, she felt whole. 6 months later, the jewelry store had a new name, Roth and Goldwyn, but the gold nameplate came second. The first thing customers saw when they walked in, a framed photo of Rachel laughing, wearing the teardrop diamond necklace. Underneath, "Truth never tarnishes." Daniel taught design workshops in the back room. Tiffany ran the business, and Margot, she published a best-selling book, The Necklace. And the lie, the world knew the truth now, but more importantly, so did they. What did you think of Tiffany and Daniel's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate this story? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to keep up with all our inspiring stories.